All right, welcome back, and it's still STV News Hub. And if you just joined us, we just remind you that it's our open day, and we shall be talking about some major discussions we've had this week. We'll be analyzing some of them, and we have our guests both in Lagos and in our Abuja studios, where our guests will be deeply expanding these topics for discussion. We shall be talking about June 12, which was one of the biggest stories that made headlines this week. The June 12 declaration. The president has said that June 12 will be the new Democracy Day and no longer May 29. We will also look at the International Day Against Child Labor. We celebrated that also on June 12, but we talked about it on the next day. And we'll look at the Trump and Kim agreement, which was signed in Singapore also this week. These two leaders met after a lot of forth and backwards on this, and finally they met and they signed an agreement for the denuclearization of the peninsula. We have with us in our Lagos studio Comrade Joseph Eva. He's the coordinator, Ijo Monitoring Group. You're welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
When our guest in Abuja arrives, we shall also introduce him to you. But let's begin with you, Comrade Joseph Eva. The biggest story, June 12. What does June 12 mean to you? Let's begin from there.
Well, June 12, wonderful day. The struggle for June 12 opened my third eyes and some others. In fact, June 12 encouraged us to go into the Niger Delta struggle. Before June 12, I was not interested in what is happening in my society until June 12. And I believe that the likes of the late Oronto Douglas, it was after June 12, we now realize that this country, few people can just hijack the destiny of others. And no matter how you are powerful, if you don't strategize, if you don't calculate, if you don't monitor your environment, other people will strategize and they will hijack your future, they will hijack the future of your children. So during the June 12 struggle, I was in my 30s, and I was surprised that my own leaders like Ovie Kokori and Warebi Agamene, Pengassin President and Secretary General, Nupeng President and Secretary General, were arrested. Before I was thinking that this matter, maybe it was just a Yoruba problem. Later, when I heard that my own Ijo brother, the late Agamene, was arrested, and Ovie Kokori arrested, then I now realized that if these people, because of June 12, why were they arrested? Then we come to realize that this June 12 is not Yoruba matter. It goes beyond Yoruba nation. And for them to arrest Niger Delta leaders that are managing the oil company workers, then there is need for us to also mobilize and confront the situation. So I formed what was known as non-indigenous for the actualization of June 12. I know Niger Delta people, we are so many in Lagos and Southwest. We fish around the Oak Creek area, the canal, the Sawwall, and we farm around Lagos area. So I have to go and mobilize Isoko people, Irobo people. I say, look of you, Kokori now, your brother, they will just kill him for nothing. We better mobilize and join the strike. So that was how we have to mobilize non-indigenous to participate in blocking routes, to see that the strike is effective, especially areas like Abua, areas like Ekpe, areas like Ketu or Jota, Mile 12, where we really have our people to join other Nigerians that will not allow this injustice. Because if we allow it tomorrow, the same cabal will come and hijack the future of the Niger Delta people. And so the struggle was not just Yoruba agenda, it was national struggle.
I'll come back to you, Comrade Eva, but let's first of all next introduce our guest in our Abuja studio. Charles Ononaju is Director, Center for Chinese Studies. He's going to be dealing basically with the China, the US President Donald Trump, and the Kim Jong-un signature, which have signing of the denuclearization process which began in Singapore during the week, which was a big issue. So we'll talk with you shortly, Mr. Onanuju, and we'll come back to Comrade Eva just a little while, just to lay some basis for our discussions on the June 12th before we get back on the China. So just please hold on, sir. Comrade Eva, I know a number of people have talked. It's good you had discussion with you just now. Sort of look at what the context of the June 12th goes beyond the Southwest, because I've had a number of people say it's great we now have a national recognition of this rather than it being Southwest. Initially was talk about this being Southwest or not, but great that you have put to bed that sort of argument, because a number of people who were activists, who were dealt with, incarcerated, who lost their lives, came from all parts of the country, not just from the Southwest. But tell me, we had a discussion earlier this week, and some people said this June 12 issue is one of several issues in the country where we have swept under the carpet the injustices, and they made mention of the Ogoni situation where Ken Saro-Wiwa and 9 others were killed. There's been also another one that has been buried and will have to be raised up. How many, when you're a great student of history, how many of these issues you think we've buried under and will have to unearth to deal with the social justice claims do you think we need to go through to know that, yes, we finally put a lead on them? My brother, they are so countless. They are so countless. That is why Nigeria is just like that. Just like, in fact, they are so countless. The injustices all around Nigeria, it is so countless that if you continue to count, even as we speak, annulment is still going on. Let me tell you another annulment. The acting president, the former acting president, Osinbajo, announced, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, announcing to the whole world, ordered the oil companies to relocate their headquarters to the Niger Delta. They refused. The oil companies annulled the order of the acting president. Then he was acting president because President Buhari was abroad on medical. The acting president of Nigeria ordered the oil companies annulled, and nothing happened. It can't happen in the same society like Togo or Benin Republic. The federal government, you see even a governor to make a pronouncement, not to talk of the vice president, now acting president, with presidential order, all oil companies, Shell, Chevron, Agip, Texaco, relocate your headquarters to the Niger Delta where you are making your money for over 50 years. The oil companies told the vice president or the acting president or the president of Nigeria, we are not relocating and you cannot do anything. That is an insult. That is an insult. But now, we like this annulment that President Buhari is apologizing, this and that. The Niger Delta people will not wait for 25 years to receive apology. So we are asking the oil companies now to respect themselves, obey Nigeria, don't look Nigeria big for nothing, obey Nigeria and relocate. That is just it. Now, for example, our leader, Ken Saro-Wiwa, others that were hanged and all that, we are also waiting for apology. We are waiting for compensation. So many things. And you know, President Obasanjo, the former president, Obasanjo made a very like the South Africa Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Right. Former President Obasanjo came up with this wonderful idea. They rubbish it.
All right, comrade, we'll come back to this June 12th Ken Saro-Wiwa's issue, but let's touch base with our Abuja guest, Charles Onanuju. Let's talk about the meeting between Donald Trump, the President of the United States, and the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. What does the agreement portend for the rest of the world? A lot of speculators have said that it's just a mere handshake that took place there, and the details of the agreement hasn't really been known to the world. But what do you make out of the agreement, or the signing of the agreement for the denuclearization of the peninsula?
Is as basically symbolic without any substance is not sufficient justice to that meeting. Yes, it was a meeting for the first time, dragging out what had been called a reclusive regime, the henchman of a reclusive regime, dragging him to limelight. It could easily be passed on that way by the established media, but it's beyond that. What it has taken in the peninsula is huge. Just like it took small, minute, little spark to inaugurate the First World War, the killing of the Serbian prince and all that, and that was the beginning of that terrible destiny. And of course, the Versailles Treaty that isolated Germany. Isolating Germany was the reason why Hitler was elected. And then that was the beginning of the catastrophe, which we know as the Second World War. So what happens in that small corner of the world cannot be ignored. It has huge significance. So for the fact that Chairman Kim met with President Trump is in itself very significant. Of course, has a lot of symbolism. The substance of the discussion, of course, is yet to be fully unfolded. And we cannot begin to say, oh yes, the peninsula is completely out of the wood. But the fact that this meeting held in itself was significant. Some, of course, issues we are put on the table, like stopping the war games, U.S.-South Korean war games, the annual war games, that is largely responsible, or what causes Pyongyang to intensify its nuclear effort, and agreeing to stop it over time. Whether it is an agreement now or whether it's an intention, for me, is significant. Secondly, Mr. Kim has also made commitment to complete the denuclearization of that peninsula. Of course, that's not going to happen immediately. North Korea is already an established nuclear power for which it considered its security insurance. And it will need numerous security guarantees to begin to effectively disengage its nuclear capability. So there is quite a long way to go, but that meeting was significant. If you remember, some few months ago, one was calling the other a dotard, the other man was calling the other a small rocket man. And you remember there was this error in the nuclear alarm in Hawaii. People ran helter-skelter thinking that Armageddon has come. And you can imagine if the real thing happens, just what an error was made in the nuclear alarm, and the whole United States was in turmoil. So you can imagine what would have happened if the real thing has come landing. So the fact that these two men met and spoke was very significant. I will have to give it to China, who actually all along assured Kim of his gradual engagement with the rest of the world. Of course, the Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea, was an enigma, was energetic. Even when Trump abruptly canceled the meeting, he headed to the United States and returned again and held another summit with Chairman Kim. He was also very, very instrumental, very, very strategic. And of course, the United Nations, key facilitator. And the willingness of also Mr. Trump, after dilly-dally, to engage in this process. Of course, the concern is, let us hope what happened to the Iran nuclear deal, in which Mr. Trump tore up, cannot happen. Although in this case, no substantial agreement has been reached. It's just a matter of let's meet and agree to work together. So I think a roadmap has been established, and this could lead to somewhere. But what is important, it has reduced tension for now.
We come back, continue discussions with Charleston Enoju in our Abuja studio, as well as Comrade Joseph Ever in our Lagos studio. Please stay with us.